engineers in Nigeria, it seems there is some conspiracy against allowing them to play the role they naturally fit into.
When you say conspiracy, from where?
Well, I mean, I identify, and many of us identify a conspiracy somehow, because I just put out my inaugural address as president, and the title of it is The Missing Link in U.S. Development, Insufficient Engineers in the Policy Space. And so when you find that, say at the executive level, there is a near absence of engineers in the policy areas where they ought to help to shape policy, as regards economic development, socio-economic development. And then you come to the legislature, it is the same thing. You come to committee, they have so many committees in both the House and in the Senate. But you see that the engineering-based committees, where common sense would say that, this is a natural slot for engineers, even the engineers in such legislatures are not put there. So, that is why we sense that there is some kind of a conspiracy to exclude engineers from those policy spaces. And it is hurting the country. It is also hurting the engineers. Because what happens is that the wrong choices are made in policy, and no matter how efficient you get to in the implementation, it just doesn't turn out right. And what happens next? Engineers are to blame. And that certainly is not the right way to go. We have looked at the matter really and found that even from 1979, the way we have run our government is not how a presidential system of government ought to be run. A presidential system of government, unlike the parliamentary system, emphasizes knowledge and experience. Because when the elections are concluded, you have actually identified who is going to run the government. You have elected a president who is going to be chief executive first and foremost, and the commander-in-chief also. And his chief executive to administer all the businesses, government businesses in such a country. And so his main job is actually to identify people who are going to do specific tasks of running these government departments. And I mean, it goes without saying that you talk about merit. But merit goes with knowledge, with experience in particular areas. And when you begin to, avoid that and begin to do things that look like mismatch, certainly it flows into, doing the job and getting the results and getting the right results. So that is why we are saying that we need to go back and look at the governance protocols. How are they structured? If you look at America, you see, they don't make one person a minister. They have very few ministers, yes, 15. But they have 225 ministers. And each one, there is a policy space that has been defined that he has to man. And when they are screening him in the Senate, they are screening him for those specific areas. And so at the end of the day, the person that will be on the top may not necessarily be the best from that sector. But he certainly has a cross-section, a cabinet, so to say, or mini cabinet in that sector that are filled with people who are qualified, who are knowledgeable, who are experienced in those policy spaces that they have been given. It will interest you to know that if you consider the State Department in the U.S., we all knew Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and now John Kerry, but he has 32 other ministers that are working with him or work with her in that department or ministry. You go to defense, for example. They have more or less 4 ministries with 4 full ministers, 4 secretaries. They have the secretary for defense, but they also have secretary for army, they have secretary for navy, they have secretary for air force. And these ones all have their deputies and assistant secretaries who are like junior ministers. So with that, you find that the various sectors are running, because you see, the people say, oh, government has no business with business, but that's not, that's so far from the truth. Government has everything to do with business, and business succeeds to the extent the government designs it to succeed. And it is from, how you choose those who are going to do the work. I mean, even myself, if somebody picks me up and says, oh, you are minister of this, I will lose my head. Because it is more than what one person can do.
I quite agree with you. But in spite of all these challenges, you've been able to succeed. And I know there must be challenges that you have faced, and you've been able to overcome them as an engineer in Nigeria. So what are these challenges?
The challenges are, like I said, that first of all, many engineering areas are not regulated and are not treated like, there are professional areas. But it will interest you and all of us to note that practice of engineering is across 6 broad areas. It's consulting engineering, it's engineering contracting, it's manufacturing, and there is engineering services, which is a mixed bag, where you have all sorts of engineering activities like laboratory services, like drilling services, like logistics, like inspections, testings and certifications, and so many other areas under this group of engineering services. And then you have maintenance, repairs and fabrications, and also vendoring of machinery and equipment and engineering materials. But you will agree with me that sale of sand here is taken as just all-comers affair. Sale of cement, sale of rebar, and all those things that you need to build a house. They are so really without testing, without certifications. And when you are building a structure, all these issues of building collapse and so on and so forth, you will generally all the time classify them into either some design error, or some construction error, or some materials error. And it means that each of these, you need to have professionals, man them. You need to have professional firms, take part in those activities.
So what are you doing to make sure this error is corrected? Because you say sale of sand without certification, and that's why we're having a lot of building collapse here and there. And the blame goes back to the engineers. So what are you doing as a body, as a society, to correct this error?
Well, we insist now that those areas must be regulated. But I tell you, there are certain things that have been put in the law regulating engineering that makes it a bit difficult to do. And we are saying those things must be removed. And I think in the Senate and in the House, they tried to remove those things in the last dispensation. So I hope when that revision of the law comes out, it will be much easier to begin to regulate all those activities in the practice of engineering. Only today, I just came from Kaduna, where we went to inaugurate the board of Shelter Tree Initiative, an initiative of Puji Automobile Nigeria, where we are trying to introduce standard garages for auto maintenance. And, the model has been prepared, and we expect that it's going to be given out to desirous craftsmen at the level of craftsmen who want to be entrepreneurs, as we tell it. And they will make some contribution, but also the initiative will make some contribution. But the underlying key is that such persons need to be registered. They need to be registered, and then their business also has to be registered. So that automotive things are completely out of what they used to be before. And so you need people who are knowledgeable in these modern trends, where you had mechanical, electronics settled before, you're talking of mechatronics now. And you need people who really have been trained properly in this. And this Shelter Tree initiative also is working together with the Learning Center of Peugeot Automobile to make sure that the people get trained for some months before they inherit these standard auto garages. For us in the Nigerian Society of Engineers, some 2 weeks ago, we also held a workshop for producing standard garages for auto vehicle maintenance, which we expect to work together with the standards organization to make mandatory standards, so it will have the force of law. And we use that to clean up that aspect of practice. But there are too many other areas that we have to also go into. And we are prepared to put people to work to make sure that in the shortest practicable time we will have regulations that address some of these wrong happenings.
Yeah. Tivotis, you've talked about challenges and what you, as the man at the helm of affairs, is doing to work together with your society to bring a turnaround. But of course, you also mentioned conspiracy. And this conspiracy, is it a common one to all engineers in Nigeria, or there are some selected groups that you feel are being alienated?
No, engineers generally, I have said it, generally, we are missing in the policy space in Nigeria.
And what is the implication of that for development, taking into consideration the role and significance of engineers in
development? The implication is they are staring all of us in the eyes. We have not, in terms of economic development, Nigeria, you can compare with a derailed train whose roof is on the ground and whose wheels are in the air. And it shouldn't have been so. If you have always had people who have knowledge of what economic development is in the various sectors and use them to make your policies, and then also use them to implement the policies in the various sectors. I'm not talking of only engineers now. I'm talking of all professionals. You see, when Mr. President went to the United States, the president there told you to appoint technocrats as ministers. The Secretary of State said so. The Vice President there also said so. It is not for fun. It's not for fun, because that is where you make or mark your economic development program.
In an open letter, by the way, to the president, you recently seemed very unhappy with the situation in the electricity industry. What really is the issue?
Well, it is the same thing we're talking about. Now, okay, let's take the electricity industry. Now, electrical engineering is a specialized field. And production of electricity is specialized. So, if you come to a place where you're making policies about how to develop electricity. Of course, you don't expect the president to be an electrical engineer. You do not also expect the vice president to be an electrical engineer. The minister also may not be an electrical engineer, but he could be. But then when you now come to the regulatory agency that is supposed to regulate the generation, transmission, systems operation, distribution and marketing of electricity, and you say an engineer cannot be there, I mean, then certainly the idea is not to develop that industry, because the regulatory agency has the duty of planning for the development, overall development on a strategic basis for the industry. And even starting from licensing, you need to pick a licensing form for the electricity industry there. And you'll find that all the issues that are considered there are technical. But then you just brush the engineers aside. This is not the first time, this is not the second time. So, I mean, we have to really complain to Mr. President.
What do you think can be done to correct this error? It's teaching time, they say saves time.
Now, you see, the problem of electricity certainly is not this government that caused it. Everybody knows that. And the things I'm complaining to is not
Mainly this government.
It's not really, it's cumulative. And, so what we should be looking at is how do we get results quickly? And then how do we also strategize over the long term? Because the basic truth is that the studies that have been done to determine electricity demand for Nigeria, especially on an industrializing basis, very important, on an industrializing basis, says we need about 280,000 megawatts. In the past, some people have been trying to downplay it. But I mean, if somebody needs to get these chairs, for us to sit, two of us, and then you keep saying, no, it's only one table we need for us to come and sit down here. I mean, we're just deceiving ourselves. Because until you go and bring these seats, we cannot sit on two seats. So if we come and begin to deceive ourselves, 6,000 megawatts that Nigeria needs, we will continue to be where we are. Because, even the demand is made more urgent now, that oil is not likely to play the kind of distractory role that it has played over time, and you have to really go into manufacturing. And if you're manufacturing, what it means is that in such a country, about 60% to 70% of what you produce in electricity will go to manufacturing. Only 5% to transportation, another 5% to agriculture, and the remaining to commercial and residential consumption. And so, out of the 180,000 megawatts people should be thinking about, you take 60% of that, that's what industry will need. And if we want to be to negotiate with some skills and tact, the same investment you could use to get that 60% of the power, you can stretch it with some negotiations and with certain technologies to even produce 100% of what is needed. And for us, the fastest way of getting about it is look at the projects that are ongoing. There are projects ongoing in transmission, in the Ministry of Power, well, Ministry of Works, Power and Housing now, and the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. We should try and fast track all those projects and then plan on how we can, if we say we want to achieve this 180,000 in 10 years, it is possible. Because the country just did about 5,000 megawatts under the NIPP in between 2005 and now. Within that same period, if planning was different, it's possible also to have done 50,000 with the same level of project management, but of course with more funds. So this time around, we need to, plan in such a way that we don't spend too much energy to chase very little things. We should be, doing programs that will bring in scores of thousands of megawatts with a view that within about 10 years, you should be hitting about 180, and that about that time too, that most of what you need, we are already producing them here. And so you find that power and manufacturing will work together in a beautiful way, and the money to do that is there.
On this note, Engineer Otis, we'll take a break now. When we return, the program continues. Welcome back to Late Edition. Today, our guest is Chief Otis Ayeji, the President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Chief, what do you think is wrong? How can Nigeria as a country with so many educated people and yet engineering is given little or no attention? Perhaps, can I use the word, even ignored?
Thank you. I think you're using the right word. And that is what we are saying. We should come off that. We should understand that engineering is development. And every country knows that. Obama, in his book, Audacity of Hope, he had mentioned, when he was talking about his beliefs, that he thinks that the country needed, how he wished America produced more engineers than lawyers. And he himself is a lawyer. The Duke of Edinburgh, on the 2nd of January, after talking about how engineering rescued Britain at the end of World War because, of their intervention in the area of manufacturing, concluded that the country was very poor and very badly damaged, and that they could only achieve some form of viability at the end of that war through engineering. And I believe that is also the situation we are in now. The country does not have those resources as they used to. And the need is badly damaged. Our infrastructure is really in tatters. And the only way we can achieve any form of viability is through engineering. Is it roads? Is it water? Is it telecoms? Is it chemicals? Cement, petroleum? Name it. Is it even safety? If we are talking about safety, it's engineering. If there are collapses and explosions and so on and so forth, that's safety engineering. And so we need to go back to, the drawing board, which is the habitat of the engineer. We are ready to help the government. We're ready to help them, work out their policies. We are ready to help them implement the policies. Industrial engineering actually is about how you analyze systems and, configure them in such a way that they work together to produce predetermined results. And it is applied in all areas, in all sectors, including governance itself. We can actually tell the structure for the government how many ministries you need. We can prepare the proper organogram for manning those ministries. What are the policy areas that you need? Industrial engineering does it for America, it does it for other places.
So how can that be done? Because now they're looking at the way our government is structured. How can it be restructured to give engineering its rightful place?
Well, the way it can be restructured is that I think that the government should send people to the US to see how a presidential system is run. Because we are mixing up things here. We are mixing parliamentary.
The government of the day.
Well, but they didn't go to study how they structure their ministries, for example. They haven't gone to take out time and do that. We have. Because when we looked at what has been happening, we said, why don't we study these governments and see what the problems are? And that's when we realized that, we are using too few people at the highest policy levels. The work 10 people should do, you give it to one person. And usually it is somebody who is not knowledgeable in the area. So how is it going to work? So we are not against any particular persons. Well, if we want to put anybody anywhere, yes, but you must, at that coordinate level, also put people who are knowledgeable, who have experience, who understand what we are talking about. Because at the end of the day, it is those bad decisions and bad policies that emanate from that highest level that messes everything up. You go to other countries, it's not like that. You go to a place like Malaysia, they reserve seats in the Senate for senior professionals, past presidents of professional institutions. They have a number of seats in their parliament. So at any time, you don't have a shortage of people who really know these various areas of the economy and of life that the legislature is legislating on. So it is both at the executive level and at the legislature. And we need to get it right. And we need to be respecting, expertise. And stop despising and resenting expertise.
Talking about respecting expertise, there's this view that engineers are not good enough. And so there's this preference to give contracts to foreigners to do. Even when the Minister of Power and Works and Housing came on our sister program, Good Morning Nigeria, recently, he said local contractors can't perform. What would you say to that?
Well, what I would say to that is that I don't believe he said so.
But assuming he said so, and you are the president of Nigerian Society of Engineers, how are you going to react to this? Because it may not just be his view, it could be the view of all others out there that are engineers, the home base, are not good enough. Because Nigerian engineers outside the country excel in many areas. You have excelled, but there's still this notion that our engineers are just not good enough. How would you defend that?
Well, I mean, if you say some other person said,
that could be the reason why you're saying that this conspiracy.
Well, I mean, it predates.
Not just this administration.
Predates this administration. What I'm saying might apply to this administration, but I'm talking about from 1979. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but coming to the issue of whether Nigerian engineers are good or not good, let's forget who said or who didn't say. But let's take the issue of Nigerian engineers being good,
or not,
or not good. it is the duty of the government to make them good, because that an engineer is good is that he has gained some experience, he has some skills which he is deploying, in the, whether it is in the civil service. I mean, there is some level of engineering that goes on there to the limit of engineering review and management. And in the universities, for example, there's engineering going on to the limit of engineering science, teaching of engineering science and research and development. But in the various other practice areas, somebody who becomes a contractor, you have to begin to give the person opportunity to begin to practice as a contractor. And I mean, if he really can't make it, of course he has to drop out. But if it is that somebody makes a mistake and you say you don't allow him to make another mistake, and so on and so forth, that is just not right. Because if we have the laws that a country normally puts forward to guard economic development, you cannot even give those jobs to expatriates. So the issue of that Nigerians are good or not don't even come in there. The proper laws will be that these things belong to the Nigerians. And they could, if they need it, bring foreign partners to, work with them. For some other countries, what they would say, like Egypt, when they did that canal, a foreign company, and that was in the days of NASA, Daniel Abdel Nasser. A foreign company, of course, did a better bid than the Egyptian company. But the president said no, that he wants to give that job to the Egyptian if he needs the other people to assist him. Let them assist him. And that's what happened. And that's how we got these Arab contractors who are here. For other countries, they will say, okay, you are coming to build this steel plant, fine. You build this first one, the next one, you will only do 50% of the work. A Nigerian firm will do the other 50%. The next time, we want the Nigerian firm to do 75%, and you do 25%. And the fourth time, the Nigerian firm should be able to do it 100%. That's how it goes. And that's how, most of these countries developed their own contractors. But when you say, you keep giving the job to expatriates, because Nigerians are no good, who said that any Nigerian then is good? I mean, take lawyers. When the late Chief Bafemi Awolowo had the treasonable felony case in 1962, he genuinely wanted to bring the best lawyer around. I think it was Dingo Foot or something like that. The best known QC around at the time. He wanted to bring him to Nigeria. But he was blocked from bringing him because they said, the rules that say, you can't practice law here if you haven't gone to law school or something like that. I don't know if the law school existed, but there were rules. And there are those rules up till today. They won't allow foreign lawyers here to practice. Who says that if people like the Foot and his successors have been coming in here, that the people who are sons now could have been sons? They wouldn't have been, because everybody will say no, that the foreigner is a better lawyer, and maybe also half of our judges would have been white people. But it was closed in for them, and it is working beautifully.
How can that be replicated in engineering?
Yeah, it can be replicated by granting Nigerians the ownership of not just engineering, but in all activities in the economy. When we change our procurement guidelines to require of a contractor evidence of foreign partnership rather than requiring evidence of local partnership, then you are starting. Because when you say you need evidence of local partnership, it means you are granting the ownership rights to the foreigner. And that tells you the mindset, the philosophy behind our procurement. So that is a place to also, try some remedy on. There is, that you can't get away from reposing confidence in Nigerians if you want to fix this place. Because other people will do it for you. And they tell us, they themselves who come here, they tell us. Look at, when Julius Berger came here, it was relatively unknown in Germany. It was Nigeria that built them up till they became a big force in the whole world. But what has happened? Hasn't the Germans left? Haven't they left? They have left. So you could also pick a Nigerian firm and treat them the way you treated Julius Berger. They will give you even bigger results with less resources. And that's just, an example. In all other areas, we are not saying keep foreigners out. No. We can work together with our people. But if you are going to say who is going to bring who, then the Nigerian should bring the foreigner, not the foreigner bringing the Nigerian. That's basically it.
So how do we raise the profile now of Nigerian professionals, beginning with engineers, since you are the president?
Fine. Well, I say, one, put more engineers in the policy levels, at the executive level, at the service level, legislative level. Do that. Then you get your policies right towards engineering and towards economic development. Then encourage those who are practicing. Give them patronage and assure them of steady workload. Not that you give somebody a contract this year and then he finishes it. For the next 5 years, he doesn't have anything to do. The things he learned there, he would have forgotten it. All the people we employed, you will pay them maybe for a year. He cannot continue if he doesn't have a guaranteed steady workload. Then, put money in our education. We keep saying we don't have money, but we've seen, we read every day the newspaper how money has been, they throw money in the air here, rather than put it in the right place. Put money in education so that the facilities there, the workshops, the laboratories will be state of the art. We are working on rejigging the curriculum, and we hope we're going to get it right so that we also be able that when somebody is passing through these programs, he is familiar with those elements that combine to really make him a leader in both business, in government, in politics, in the society. We are working on that. And then of course in practice, that, as I said before, you must continue to guarantee our Nigerian engineering firms steady workload. Continue giving them jobs, because there are jobs coming up every day. You will keep building infrastructure. You will keep working on natural disasters to contain them, to limit that. You will keep working on this climate change of thing that is bringing about all sorts of things. And tell you what, look, even medicine has become heavily engineering center. Any practice of medicine without biomedical engineering is just primitive. And biomedical engineering is, in fact, the most difficult field in engineering to read now, because it demands a combination of virtually all the disciplines of engineering. And the typical hospital in America, in India, where people troop out to go to seek medical services, they are all based on biomedical engineering. You know? So, we have a lot to offer, and we are ready to offer, but we need the support system. We need the recognition. Our government ought to understand that we can fix their problems intellectually and also with the skills of our hands.
It's good to know. But every profession has their bad eggs in court. Yes. So to what extent does corruption or the desire to get rich and cut corners affected the integrity of Nigerian engineers?
Well, I mean, our Lord Jesus Christ, he chose 12 people. One of them was a thief. And then if we will go in a local discourse or local balance, they say the monkey said he can only vouch for the child is carried in the womb, because he doesn't know when the one is carried on the back would have, plucked the banana and ate. It happens with everything, politicians, doctors, lawyers, judges, everybody. I mean, in any group, there are some bad people, but I mean, they usually are few. And you can't say because of those few, you lose sight of the majority of hardworking, honest other practitioners. And we vow, we take a vow to protect the safety, the health, and the environmental protection of our environment. We vow to protect that. We take a vow as part of our professional, achieving our professional status. Doctors also have their Hippocratic vows and so on, but we are one of those professions that are vowed to protect humanity.
So then, what disciplinary measures are in place for area members? Because you did agree that there will be bad eggs.
Yes, there is.
So what are they?
There is. We have, in the Nigerian Society of Engineers, we have an investigation panel, and then the council, takes the report from the panel and, prescribes disciplinary action over area members. When they are reported. The Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria also has an investigating panel and a disciplinary tribunal of the status of a high court. But it is on professional malpractice issues they concentrate, not on criminal aspects of such fractions. So we have that, but I don't think that is not. We have too many people who are honest, God-fearing, and they do their job straight, and as badly as our system has been functioning, you cannot imagine the heroism they put into what they do to even get the little bit of results that we are getting from our infrastructure.
Thank you, Chief Otis. And during a visit to the Vice President by the Executive of Engineers, led by you, he urged Nigerians to build, Nigerian engineers in particular, to build capacity for national development.
Yes.
What is your society doing to take up that challenge?
In fact, when Mr. Vice President was talking, I was just smiling inside me, because I said, these are some of the things that I spoke about in my investiture address. Because we are already working on this capacity building thing from the curriculum side. But I told you that to train an engineer is of two parts. The school is just one part. You do engineering science. But you have to go out for 4 years to work hands-on. And that is also where there is a problem. And that problem is the problem of the economy. The problem of a collapsed economy, the problem of factories being closed, and very many other work places not functioning, so that people can go there and work and then help to bring themselves up. So that is something that we all have to work collectively to solve, to make sure that we begin to bring the economy up. And then our training both in the school and out of school would actually dovetail and make for greater positive impact.
Thank you, Chief Otis.
Thank you.
And we're just talking about infrastructure and how we develop Nigeria, and looking inwards, since, like we all know, oil is no longer the way to go.
Yes.
Anywhere you go in the world, you see infrastructure, some dazzling, you just think like, wow, they are never done without engineers. So how can we address this need for more engineers in Nigeria that can make our country a wow nation? Also, people will just see infrastructures and see an engineer at work.
Now let me tell you, we have been discussing for maybe 2 months now or so about $2.1 billion that, we don't know how it went.
You've been discussing with who?
Publicly.
Okay.
That's what is in the newspapers. Almost every day in the past 2 months, you see something like that. $2.1 billion. What that means is, if you were to face electric power generation, it can give you a 2,000 megawatt power plant. We don't have that type in Nigeria. The biggest we have is less than 2,000 megawatts. Or it can give you 2 refineries that are like the Warri refinery, about 100 to 120,000 barrels per day kind of refinery. That's what we are talking about. If you had that, you will be exporting petroleum on a daily basis. We cannot talk of if you put that in water. If you put that in water, the penetration of water connectivity for Nigeria will be hitting almost 100%. And this is just, so if we resolve to put our money where our mouth is and where our needs are, and you want to use Nigerian engineers to do that, Nigerian engineering firms, Nigerian engineering contractors and consultants and vendors and all kinds of people working, technicians, technologists, craftsmen. You also go around in Nigeria and you'll be saying, wow, how did we get this glittering functional infrastructure? You know that roads, for example, our attitude to roads before. You can build a road from here to Sokoto, and while you are building it, you have hundreds, if not thousands of people working on it. Immediately they finish, it becomes just a desolate kind of concern with just vehicles, flying on it and going on. A road can also be run like a factory. If you have a road, there must be people who should be working on it. You don't wait until the thing cuts. There must be people who are working, and people must be paying to use such roads. Because the definition of a road does not admit of even one pothole. If you have one pothole on a road, it is no longer a road, it is a track or some other thing. And we have the money to do that. So, we are calling for the discipline to put our money where our needs are. And then challenge Nigerian engineers, and you will see what we'll get. We'll take you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Otis is the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and he's been our guest on Late Edition, talking about the role of engineers in development. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
And that's it on this edition of Late Edition. Next week, we'll bring you another guest with another interesting topic and media service.